Hello everyone, and welcome back to NexGen News. I'm Trenton.
And I'm Giovanna.
And this is NexGen News. At NexGen News, we bring news to the next generation.
That's right, Gen Z.
And with that, let's head to our top story.
Remember when the news was so calm and straightforward?
No, not really.
Now that I think about it, you're right.
These days, news and media are a complete circus. It's like you don't know who to trust anymore. Fake news has become so problematic that companies such as Twitter and Facebook are removing and labeling posts that spread misinformation. With the 2020 election fast approaching, misinformation is very problematic, especially for voters. With that in mind, Twitter has updated how it warns users of misinformation by adding an alert message below the tweet. Twitter has even labeled more than 10 of President Trump's tweets as misinformation.
Hold up, I can't stand fake news. But this situation makes me wonder, is this violating our First Amendment right of freedom of speech?
That's certainly an interesting question. I guess the First Amendment never said anything about misinformation, but I'm not sure our founding fathers could predict the age of fake news that we're living in now.
You know, misinformation is kind of like a Halloween costume, dressing up as something it's not.
It sure is. Because the age of fake news may not be going away. We need to learn to see through the darkness. That's why Oscar is here to tell us the difference between facts, opinions, and just plain misinformation in this week's edition of Now You Know.
Hey NexGen News, Oscar here to shed some light on the difference between facts, opinions, and misinformation. Let's start with the classic fact versus opinion. Facts are something that can be proven true through research. Opinions, on the other hand, are a belief or someone's own interpretation and are therefore subjective, inherently biased, and cannot be proven by scientific evidence. Opinions may start with the phrase, I think, or I believe, but not always. Let's take a look at an example about climate change to explain the difference. Let's start with facts. It is a fact that the Earth's surface temperature has increased a little more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880. Both NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have data to prove this fact. Now let's check out an opinion. For example, that statement, I believe everyone should drive electric cars to save the planet. Although driving electric cars will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, this statement is based on their own belief and is therefore an opinion. But now let's take a look at the statement, climate change does not exist. Although it does not start with I think or I believe, it would be an example of an opinion. Although someone may say that climate change does not exist or is not happening, this is their belief and not a fact because the science and research proves otherwise. Remember the good old days? Before fake news? Where all we had to distinguish between were facts and opinions? Well, now it is more complicated. The age of fake news or misinformation is upon us. Misinformation takes facts and information and purposely shapes or leaves out certain parts to convey a specific message. Sometimes misinformation can be written off relatively easily as an opinion, but sometimes it disguises itself as a fact. An example is carbon dioxide emissions from humans is beneficial for our planet because plants need it. Yes, it is true that plants rely on carbon dioxide to make food, but this statement is misleading. It makes people believe that carbon dioxide is completely harmless. In reality, scientists have proven that the increased carbon dioxide emissions from humans are responsible for heating our planet because it gets caught in the atmosphere. Misinformation such as saying carbon dioxide emissions are very beneficial is very dangerous for our planet because it makes humans think that it's okay to continue emitting carbon dioxide at the same rate. So to summarize, facts are based on scientific evidence and can be proven. Opinions are based on someone's belief or interpretation of the fact, which makes them a personal point of view. And finally, that pesky rascal misinformation purposely leaves out or shapes information to spread a message that benefits the speaker. My best advice to you, NexGen viewers, is to always research the source of your information and double check the facts. And now, you know.
Speaking of facts, we sure do have a lot of them in this next story.
Let's talk about plastics and pollution. Did you know that since 1950, the world has created 6.3 billion tons of plastic waste, and 91% of it has never been recycled?
Is that correct? That sounds wild.
I know. Now, due to coronavirus, we're creating more, not less plastic trash, making our current efforts to slow down the use of plastic very difficult. Let's take a look.
The coronavirus pandemic has sparked a rush for plastic, just as the world seemed to be waking up to its damaging environmental impacts. Masks, hospital gowns, and all manner of medical equipment are made from plastic. As demand surged, so did the waste, as most of it can't be recycled. The economic slowdown is only adding to the problem by intensifying a price war between recycled and new plastic. It's a war that recyclers worldwide admit they are losing.
All plastic starts as a form of oil, and because the demand for oil is low, the price is low. This means new plastic is much cheaper than recycled plastic. For example, drink bottles made of recycled plastic are 83% to 93% more expensive than new plastic. Unfortunately, the recycling industry, like many others, has been hit hard due to the pandemic, but the need for plastic products continues to soar.
Plastic makers are keen to stress that their products have saved lives.
Early on, it was determined that plastic was going to be needed for things like masks and gowns and the plastic sheeting we see or on face masks or used around registers or other locations. So plastics played a very important role in helping to prevent disease transmission and also in healthcare settings.
As our use of plastic grows, so does pollution on land and in our oceans. And although the plastic we use to help fight coronavirus has literally been life-saving, there are other considerations to think about.
But plastic is an accepted and significant driver of climate change. The manufacture of 4 plastic bottles alone releases the equivalent greenhouse gas emissions of driving 1 mile in a car, according to the World Economic Forum. Then there's the devastating environmental damage plastic pollution can cause.
To give us a better understanding of how this issue affects the environment, we want to welcome the Curator of Ecosystems from the California Science Center, Dr. Chuck Kopsak. Hey, Dr. Chuck, thanks for taking the time to visit with us today.
Thanks, NexGen News. It's great to be here. I'm glad to help out.
We were wondering if you could explain a little bit about how plastic waste impacts the environment.
Sure. Plastic waste is unfortunately become a bigger and bigger problem since plastics were first invented way back in the last century. Scientists, geologists believe that in some point in the future, when geologists dig down to try to understand the ages and things and characteristics of different phases and parts of the Earth's history, they'll actually find a layer where plastic starts, and they can date that as to when humans started using plastic. Plastic's also got a really bad problem in that a lot of what ends up in the ocean is microscopic, very, very tiny pieces of plastic. Some of that's from the breakdown of the plastic itself. Others is because little pieces of it that's used to make plastic gets accidentally dumped in the ocean. The classic example of another form of plastic problem in the ocean is the plastic bags. Sea turtles love to eat jellies, sea jellies. And a lot of times plastic bags floating in the ocean look a lot like a sea jelly. And so we found that unfortunately sea turtles will often eat these plastic bags, and that can cause a blockage in their intestines. And again, that's not a good thing. That usually causes them to starve to death. They can't pass waste or anything.
Thanks for explaining that. I didn't know about the microscopic plastic in the ocean.
Our last question is, what are some actions we can take to use less plastic to help our environment?
Plastics are a great helpful thing for us. I mean, there are a lot of things that we use plastics for that we really couldn't use any other sort of material for. But we should reserve the use of plastics for those very important things, not simply just to get a quick drink or something. It's not that hard to carry a reusable bottle, and it could be a plastic bottle, but a reusable bottle would be much better to use all the time. Most of the plastic that is produced in the world and that we use is no longer recycled. You know, plastics have numbers on them that give you an indication of how easily recyclable they are. And currently, the plastics labeled 1 or 2, those are plastics that are fairly easy to recycle. But 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those get harder and harder to recycle. And nowadays, there really isn't anyone that's recycling those. And in fact, for a long time, most of the higher number plastics that we produce as trash here in the United States was getting shipped overseas. It was being bought by other countries, and then it was being recycled or maybe burned to make energy or something. But now those countries are not doing that anymore. They're not buying our trash. Look for plastics. If you have to use plastics or something, look for plastics that are made out of number 1 or number 2, and avoid plastics that are only meant to be used one time and then thrown away. Those are the 2 major things that we can all try to do to help reduce the amount of plastic in the world around us.
Those are some great ideas. I'm definitely going to try and avoid single-use plastic and carry a reusable water bottle.
Dr. Chuck, thank you so much for speaking with us today. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. I had a great time, and I'm glad I could come and talk to you all and share what I know about plastics and the pollution in the ocean. Great job. Thank you.
All right, NexGen viewers, it's up to you. How will you help us in the fight against plastic pollution? Hey, Giovanna, what's worse than hitting a person with a tennis ball?
I don't know. What?
Hitting 2 people with a tennis ball. That's right. Novak Djokovic, the #1 men's singles tennis player in the world, has hit not 1 but 2 line judges during recent tennis play. During the first incident at the US Open, Djokovic hit a ball in frustration, which then hit a line judge in the neck. She cried out and hit the ground before Djokovic ran over to her. He was then disqualified from this tournament. Then a few weeks later, he accidentally hit another line judge with a tennis ball during the French Open.
Dang, since when did tennis become dodgeball? Those poor line judges never saw it coming.
For real. Well, Djokovic has an interesting solution to his problem, getting rid of line judges altogether. Djokovic recently shared his opinion that all line judges should be replaced with technology. Hawkeye technology, which is used in some tennis tournaments now, can detect if a ball lands inside the court or outside. With this technology, he thinks there's no reason to keep line judges on the court at all.
I guess without line judges, he won't have any targets to hit.
That's true. Today, though, we want to talk to another professional tennis player to hear his opinion about line judges.
You know a professional tennis player?
I sure do. Giovanna and NexGen News, please say hello to Bradley Klon. Bradley, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, NexGen News, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We were wondering, what is your opinion about technology replacing line judges?
Obviously, with COVID, we're trying to reduce the amount of people on site and on the court at all times. And it's a great initiative in terms of safety for that. You do have the cost of the electronic line calling. They already have the electronic line calling on a lot of the courts as a backup for the line judges. But you also have the cost of paying all the linesmen and their expenses for the tournament. And then it becomes just purely from a cost benefit analysis, what is more expensive in the long run. As more of these tournaments introduce electronic line calling, the scale should help the cost going down.
Thanks for that perspective. I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of money.
Okay, our last question is, how do you think technology replacing line judges will affect professional tennis?
I think it'll affect professional tennis in a way that there will be less arguments on court, and we'll ultimately have to take the decision that the electronic line calling makes as final. You take away the human element, and there's no second guessing what the electronic line calling says goes. I've watched some of the recent tournaments that have used it, and if there's ever a close call, they will show a video of the ball so you can tell that where it landed and how close it actually was. But once they make that quick call, it is final. However, there are some instances where the electronic line calling isn't completely accurate. There's still a measurement of like a little margin of error for it. And in instances where there's a blatant mistake, the chair umpire has the authority to overrule, in which case that becomes final. And you could get some disagreements with players being upset about that, but I do think it takes, in the long run, I think it takes some of the guesswork out and will eventually adapt to this electronic line calling.
That's true. You can't argue with technology.
Thanks so much, Bradley, for talking with us today, and best of luck in your next tournament.
Thanks so much. Goodbye, NexGen.
It's so cool you know him.
What can I say? I've got the hookup. Stay tuned to see if tennis line judges get replaced by technology, if Djokovic managed to hit another one before then, and check out Bradley Klein in his next tournament.
You know, Trenton, lately I've been seeing people out at restaurants and shopping in stores, but I also hear about others losing their jobs and that our economy is pretty bad right now.
You're right, Giovanna. A lot of Americans are struggling financially right now. That's where economic stimulus plan comes into play. Lately, keeping track of how the government is trying to help the economy is like watching a game of intense ping pong. There's so much back and forth, you don't even know who really wins. Let's go to Oscar for some clarity on how an economic stimulus package works in this week's segment of NexGen Finance.
Hey NexGen viewers, it's Oscar and I'm here to talk about economics and what the deal is with the stimulus plan.
Please.
Simply put, economics deals with goods and services and the way we make and spend money. Let's just say you are saving up $100 for a new bike and you decide to set up a lemonade stand to earn money. You borrow $25 from your parents to buy the lemons, sugar, and all the other supplies you need. You think about how much to charge for each cup, set up your stand, and bam! It's time to make some money. Before March 2020, you made enough money to pay back your parents and had $50 to put towards your bike. But when the pandemic hit, it wasn't safe for you to set up your stand, and you haven't made any money since. Your parents know how important the bike is to you, so they kindly give you the other $50 so you can go purchase your bike. The bike shop owner is happy to make this sale, and with the money they make, they can buy more of the bike bills that some customers have been requesting to boost their sales and pay more employees. That $50 your parents gave you, well, that's an example of economic stimulus. The money they gave you made it possible for you to put the money in the bike shop and for the bike shop to put money into more products and their employees. To go back to our actual economy, help from the first $2.2 trillion stimulus package passed by the legislative branch and back in March did help stimulate the economy at the time. But it has not been enough. The American people, businesses, industries, and communities are still struggling for money. And the new negotiations for a second stimulus plan are confusing. As the White House and the legislature go back and forth on what should go in the latest plan, including the possibility of receiving a check up to $1,200 for now. All the American public can do is wait to see what kind of help they can get, and when that help will come. In the meantime, the lemonade stand idea sounds pretty good. Or it should be apple cider, or hot cocoa. And that's all for NexGen Finance.
Hey Trenton, you know that feeling when you win something that you've been working really hard at?
Yes, I actually won a hot dog eating contest once, but I didn't feel so great after.
Okay. I guess not all winning feels so good, but winning a Nobel Prize sure does. This October, the 2020 Nobel Prize winners were announced. In case you aren't familiar with the Nobel Prize contest, here's the rundown. Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel created the Nobel Prize contest back in 1895 to honor outstanding individuals or groups that contribute to bettering society. There are 5 Nobel Prize categories: medicine, physics, chemistry, literature, and peace. Today, we want to honor this year's Nobel Prize winners. Without further ado, I present the Nobel Prize Awards show presented by NexGen News.
Welcome everyone to the Nobel Prize Awards show. I'm your host Trenton.
And I'm Giovanna. Looking sharp, Trenton.
I was gonna say the same to you.
Well, thank you. Now, let's get to it.
First up, we have the Nobel Prize for Medicine. And the winners are Harvey J. Alter, Michael Houghton, and Charles M. Rice for the discovery of hepatitis C virus.
Thanks to their discovery, blood tests are now available and have essentially eliminated hepatitis C transmission, which usually causes about 400,000 deaths a year.
That's incredible. Who's up next?
The Nobel Prize for Physics was split in half this year. The first half goes to Roger Penrose, and the second half split between Reinhard Genzel and Andrea Ghez. All three physicists were awarded the prize for their new discoveries about black holes.
That's super cool. Up next, we have the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. The winners are Emmanuelle Charpentier and Jennifer A. Doudna. These two women discovered an amazing genetic technology, CRISPR genetic scissors.
These scissors are not for arts and craft kids. Instead, they can be used to change the DNA of animals, plants, and microorganisms. They're being used in new cancer therapies.
Amazing. Up next, we have the Nobel Prize for Literature, and the winner is none other than American poet Louise Gluck. The Academy chose Gluck for her unmistakable, beautiful, poetic voice that makes the individual experience universal.
And with that, we've reached the final award, the Nobel Peace Prize.
I wonder who it will be.
Drum roll, please. And the winner is the World Food Program. The World Food Program is a part of the United Nations and is the world's largest humanitarian organization focused on hunger and food security.
Coronavirus has caused an upsurge in the number of worldwide victims of hunger, and with locations in over 80 countries, the World Food Program has been on the ground battling this issue.
Congratulations to all of the 2020 Nobel Prize winners. Your work is inspiring and a ray of sunshine in this dumpster fire of a year.
And to the next generation, we can't wait to see what you do to better our world.
Well, NexGen viewers, that about wraps up our newscast and award show for today.
We hope you enjoyed it and are feeling a little bit more inspired than you were before.
Hey Trenton, do you realize that the next time we'll see the viewers, we'll know who the next president is?
That's true. Make sure to remind the adults in your life to vote by November 3rd if they haven't already. For now, I'm Trenton.
And I'm Giovanna.
And we are NexGen News, bringing the news to the next generation.